Nelsons don't quit. My mother's voice echoed in my head as my finger hovered over the send button, centimeters away from firing off the resignation letter I'd had typed up for months. That's because you've never experienced failure, I wanted to say back to her. Tonight, Nick O'Connor's face took up the entire television screen hanging above the bar, like some sick cosmic joke, as he conversed with the hosts of our network's most prestigious show about the games he had been covering for spring training. He'd spent only a few days in Arizona, but they sent me to Florida for the whole spring training season without so much as a thank you. I tossed my phone down on the bar with a sigh and signaled to the bartender for another rum and soda. Not only would my parents endlessly nag me if I quit without a backup plan, but pressing that send button would waste all my hard work. I would confirm that I wasn't cut out for this reporting job, proving my parents and all my worst critics right. Truthfully, I'd known when I first wanted to go into this industry that it was a boys' club, and I would have to work 10 times as hard as my male counterparts. You not only had to play your cards right, but you had to have connections to get the leg up you needed, which I did not have. Nick was going on about the interview he had with the top pitching prospect for the Denver Diamonds. His megawatt smile was nearly blinding, and not a single hair was out of place on his perfectly styled head. He was exactly what the network was looking for: charismatic, charming, and knowledgeable. My eye twitched. Over the past 4 years, I'd worked myself to the bone to prove my worth as a field reporter. And last year, Nick O'Connor, the son of a longtime executive, waltzed in and received the best stories to cover. Getting passed over was becoming all too familiar. People like Nick ruined my 5-year plan, shredded the goals I had. Unforeseen circumstances out of my control. What made it even more unbearable was that I was good. I deserved a promotion just as much, maybe even more, than any of my coworkers that got it instead of me. But they always overlooked me. Something along the lines of always the bridesmaid and never the bride. The last thing I wanted was to stare at Nick's face on the late-night slot I had been dreaming about since my first day on the job, so I opened my mouth to ask the bartender to change the television. "Can we, change the channel? Anything but baseball, please." It took me a moment to realize I wasn't the one who had spoken, as a figure was sliding into the open seat next to me, a hat drawn low over his eyes. He glanced over at me for only a second as the bartender changed the channel from Nick O'Connor's face to a comedy show. But that was all I needed to realize I was sitting next to Jamil Edman, the home run season record holder and starting center fielder for the reigning World Series champions, the Chicago Cougars. Jamil had been thrust into stardom last season after the success he and his team had, which earned him a new contract that came with an eye-popping salary and brands lining up for a chance to work with him. He was featured in commercials, his face was on billboards, clothing brands were rushing to make him his own line. Everywhere you turned, you were met with Jamil's crooked smile. He was no longer just an athlete. He was quickly becoming part of our pop culture. But the Jamil Edman sitting next to me was missing those well-known qualities. The corners of his mouth were turned down, and his shoulders drooped with defeat. There was no trace of the happy-go-lucky center fielder that had made a name for himself in the league for his upbeat personality and silly pranks he loved to pull on his teammates during games. This man looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and all he wanted was to go unnoticed for one single night.